with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
Beautiful. Wow. Hey. That took me there. Love that. Give it up for it. Wow. Yeah, so good to see everyone. Most people understand general intelligence, which is the ability to learn, to apply knowledge, and to solve problems. But there is a different type of intelligence, the one that enables people to show empathy and kindness toward others, to reflect on our lives in relation to others, and through self-awareness helps regulate our own emotions, and that is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is defined as a way of recognizing, understanding our own personalities and natures, and how we think, feel, and act. It shapes our interactions with others and our understanding of ourselves. It defines how and what we learn. It allows us to set priorities. It determines the majority of our daily actions. According to leading emotional intelligence expert Joshua Friedman, quote, research suggests it is responsible for as much as 80% of the success in our lives, end quote. When we begin to notice and recognize ourselves in relation to the earth and all its inhabitants, we can positively or negatively affect the world and those around us. Emotional intelligence is what enables us to live fully into our values. Without it, what we say we believe in and what we stand for would be but words drifting in the wind. While the area of emotional intelligence is a vast field of study with many strands, there are a few that stand out for me. Our ability to self-reflect and to regulate our emotions, particularly around our capacity for showing empathy, kindness, and compassion toward others. Having empathy and compassion and being able to demonstrate them enables us to communicate better, to connect, to companion, and to challenge each other in healthy ways. Social neuroscience is a relatively new field of study that seeks to understand the relationship between biological mechanisms and social behavior between two or more people. It posits that our natural default as humans is toward empathy and kindness, expressed in our helping, our responding to someone in pain or in need. Showing empathy, and here I connected with kindness and compassion, is a crucial way of bringing meaning to our lives and to the lives of others. We are by nature empathetic and altruistic creatures. At least, this is the argument. And while some people are more apt at demonstrating it, it is something that most can activate and cultivate by choice at will. Having grown up as a Christian fundamentalist in Christian fundamentalism, and then leaving most of it to pursue the spiritual journey that I'm on today, I now have a truly amazing, I see how truly amazing the human Jesus really was. Looking at his work with the eyes and understanding I now have, I can see how he truly mastered and walked in emotional intelligence. When, for instance, he used the parable of the Good Samaritan to show how one could love one's neighbor as oneself. Of course, we all know the moral of the story. The neighbor figure in the parable is the one who shows mercy to the injured man. Now, somebody just encouraged me today to say, the injured trans woman in high heels. Can we go there, Brother Rick? So, attending to her wounds and then paying for her health care. Or Obamacare, as someone said. The non-neighbors were the ones who cut off, ignored, or refused to feel empathy. The one thing that truly keeps us connected. But we've all been there, right? How many times have we walked by a homeless person or seen a street beggar approach our automobile only to allow ourselves to default to our mannequin stance? Don't look, don't say anything, don't eat. They don't exist. No. If you look, you're going to have to give them money. If you look, they're going to come to you, right? Now, I don't usually ask this particular church, this particular service to respond to me. But y'all got to look at me and say, nah, there's something now, right? It makes me feel a little better. I'm still that old Baptist preacher now. I've been delivered, but... But no amen now. We don't want an amen here. Just say, yeah, thumbs up, Randy. Yeah, good, okay. I'm just having fun with y'all, okay. Because when we see them, we have to acknowledge their humanity by making eye contact. No matter how brief it is, we're going to be presented with feelings that we have to respond in some way. That's something we don't want. Now, there are all kinds of reasons for us not to respond. We've heard that it may not be safe to give, quote unquote, these people money or to even engage with them. So we uncomfortably ignore them. I said uncomfortably ignore them. I was in a coffee shop the other day, and this individual walked in who was obviously mentally ill and was doing all kinds of behaviors, and everybody in that place, and I was just observing them, just didn't notice. And I began to see how uncomfortable people became. But it is against our nature. It is against our very nature to ignore people in need. But our continued practice, if we continue practicing it, has allowed us to do just that. And many of us are now immune, shall I say, to that empathetic pool that is innate among us. And this is something that we do regularly. We shut off that gauge. We get busy with the world around us, and sometimes we can get lost in our own feelings and doings that we don't notice, that we are not actively noticing. Or perhaps we refuse to allow ourselves to notice in a way that would then require us to act. And this is not just us. This is the world all over. In my understanding, the biggest part of the Samaritan story was not tending to the man's pain and paying his or her health care, but rather it was in him first noticing, the Samaritan noticing, seeing the man, and caring enough to stop whatever was going on in his own life to tend. I can tell you that as a person of color, being seen is of great importance because I'm not always seen. And I say this because my partner is white. And when we walk in the room, I see people ignore me while they're looking at him. It's a real thing. So not being seen from the eyes of someone's biases and stereotypes, but rather as one should be seen as I want to be seen, as a whole person. In 2001 TED Talk, psychologist and award-winning author and expert on emotional intelligence, Daniel Goldman, tells the story about him heading down to a New York subway and noticing a shirtless man bent over, lying on the ground, people, hundreds of them walking by and stepping over the shirtless man. None inquired as to his well-being. He indicated that since he had been exploring his own awareness and unawareness, he stopped to check on the man. And when he did, everything changed. Immediately, others also stopped and noticed. That one single act of kindness became contagious. What they learned was the man was Hispanic, spoke no English, had no money, and had been wandering the streets for days and then collapsed from hunger. After those who stopped attended to the man with food and drink, the man felt refreshed and was soon back on his feet. They recognized the man in that shared moment which connected them all together. And they responded. And I've seen this countless and countless times, even in the work that we do here. When we take notice, we might indeed feel a need to act, but that's the feeling probably we should be feeling. Maybe we feel it's someone else's job to act sometimes. And at times we get tired of always having to do the right thing. I tell you, as a preacher, I certainly get tired of having to do the right thing. But our ability to regulate our emotions makes us truly remarkable beings, and at the same time also can make us quite menacing. Emotional intelligence doesn't always lead to loving kindness and compassion. You're right, Randy. There are those who possess higher degrees of emotional intelligence, who have chosen to use their ability to read people and then to manipulate them for their own satisfaction and personal gain. And we know some of these folks, don't we? There we go. In their 2002 work, psychologists Delroy Paulus and Kevin Williams proposed the so-called Dark Triad, the three prominent personality traits that are offensive but non-pathological. The Dark Triad includes Machiavellianism, that is, an inclination to strategically exploit and deceive others; narcissism, a sense of entitled self-importance; and psychopathy, a tendency toward callousness and cynicism. Building on their work, author and Columbia University psychologist Scott Barry Kaufman developed the Light Triad to bring the balance to the Dark Triad. The Light Triad consists of faith in humanity, believing in the fundamental goodness of humans; humanism, valuing the dignity and worth of each human being; and Kantianism, treating people as ends in themselves, not means to an end. I must say the Light Triad is very much in line with the UU principles. You're right, Randy. Yeah. Kaufman and his colleagues concluded in the 2020 paper that quote, social trust and affiliation with others, and a relatively lower expression of an antagonistic and exploitative orientation appears to be a particular productive path to personality development, life satisfaction, and a deeper connection with humanity, end quote. Kaufman designed a survey entitled Light versus Dark Side of the Force Test that scores users on 6 personality facets, 3 from both the so-called light and dark triads. According to the survey results, women, for instance, tend to be leaning more toward the light triad than men. Go figure. Oh, they said amen to that. I didn't put them up to it. As do people in their older age. U.S. senators, not so much. Now, if you want to take the survey for yourself, you can. It's in the back of on your address. The link is on your order of service and also in the chat online. I took it. Of course, I skewed more on the lighter side. Of course, you knew that, right? Just wait. I'm going to tell you something about me in a little bit. Perhaps equally crucial is the realization that our dark side is not something we should seek to avoid or suppress. People who try to feel more closely to what they think society or others would want to embrace about them tend to try to cut out their negative traits or darker sides. But as Kaufman says, complete suppression never works. The truth will always find a way of popping back up. You're right, Randy. Sometimes in full force. Harnessing your dark side is essential to becoming a whole person, end quote. Hoffman believes that the dark side played an important role in motivating people to join the civil rights movement and to fight for social justice. He adds that channeling your aggression towards real injustices in the world and integrating that into your higher level goal is important, end quote. Now, it seems that we are facing, in our society, we are facing huge challenges. And it feels like the world is in constant turmoil and conflict, and we are having to deal with that. And it appears that the dark side is where people are choosing to express themselves the most. And many of us are feeling deeply and desperately for some semblance of a return to normal or some normalcy, if there's such a thing. So I have a question that I want you to ask each of you, not for you to answer out loud, but simply to ponder. What emotions, what feelings do you recall having when you heard that President Biden caught COVID recently? Did you feel sadness, anger, compassion, fear, grief, relief, glee? Do you recall how you felt when President Trump caught COVID a few years back? Did you feel differently by chance? Well, I've heard people express glee on both sides. But the emotion of pleasure in others, misfortune, I think it's called Schadenfreude. Is it Schadenfreude? In German, is generally regarded as morally evil. It is often considered to be less acceptable than even envy, which is regarded as one of the deadly sins in Catholicism. It would appear to be morally more perverse to be pleased with another person's misfortune than to be pleased with another person's good fortune. This is not who we want to be. So after one Sunday, I left church. I was feeling high. I was feeling just good. I had spent some time with all you church folks, and I was like, yes. So I was driving down Peoria, and it was this car that was trying to back in. So he had stopped. And so I, was trying to go around them. And by that time, this other car was going around. I didn't see them. It was in my blind spot. And they just honked, and I stopped. And I was like, I messed up. I didn't see them. So I was going to say, I'm sorry. But by the time he rode up next to me, he was giving me the finger. I'm not going to do that, but you get it, right? He was giving it to me. And I was taken aback. I was shocked. I was like, no, I'm a preacher. Don't do that. I'm like, where in the hell is my collar when I need it? A preacher. Then I started saying to him, shame on you, shame on you. He just kept giving it to me. And we was going down the road. I'd pass him, and he'd come up, and he was still giving it to me. For about 2 miles, and I was getting angry. I was like, I'm going to follow you home and tell you off. I hope you have a wreck. That's what I thought. That was that dark side. But I tell you, I pulled over into a parking lot, and I just sat, and I gathered myself. I said, that's not who I am. But then I began to send warm intentions toward that individual and his family and for his safety driving. After examining my feelings in this and other instances, I realized my feelings didn't always align with my stated values. I can say that I've struggled with keeping my dark side from prevailing in the recent years. For a split second, I really wanted that man to suffer. But I realized that there have been moments where I was not willing to show empathy and feel compassion. I chose not to. But I also understood my responsibility, not solely to others, but to my own heart, to pull the pendulum back toward my center, toward the feeling that would allow for compassion for this gentleman or those who are opposed to me, not for his sake or their sake, but for my own. Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl stated, quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom, end quote. My values tell me that those on the socio-political opposite are not my enemies. In fact, I don't feel that I have any enemies. Even those who say they hate liberals, blacks, and gays, all those categories that I fit. Those who would want to physically harm me, if given a chance, are not my enemies in the way I choose to respond to them. They are the ones who have chosen not to allow empathy, kindness, and compassion to reign in their lives, and most likely have embraced the darker aspects of who they are. They usually do more harm to themselves than they do to any of us personally. We must remind ourselves of our values. We are the Samaritans in our story, the ones who show up when it counts. And we espouse to use UU theologian Reverend Tendeka's term, I love beyond belief. We see it in all of our writings, and we hear it regularly. We believe in and hold true the inherent worth and dignity of every person, compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and the respect for the independent web of all existence of which we are a part. We are not individually the web, but we are single strands within it and that make up the web. We affect it. What we do or don't do affects the whole. When we lift our brothers, sisters, and others, we lift our own selves. When we love our neighbors, in essence, we are loving ourselves. It is the kindness to one another, to our collective future that holds it all together, if you will. Maybe it is the love for our neighbors and enemies alike, an old concept we've been struggling with for centuries now. And if we feel that there are those who are outside of the bonds where we can show kindness or compassion, just remember, there have been countless sages and avatars throughout history who have encouraged us toward empathy, kindness, and compassion, even for our perceived enemies. Our next evolutionary jump in consciousness is upon us, and our literal survival depends on our ability to meet the new challenges, while seeking to live in harmony with one another and this planet. Using the words of Abe Lincoln, quote, "We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic chords of memory will swell when again touched as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. So be kind, and may it be so." Bless you.